New York, the city that never sleeps. But lately, it feels like it never stops struggling. For millions, the American dream here has turned into a waiting list. A list for housing, for stability, for a life that once felt possible. Because right now, this city is in the middle of a housing crisis. One that's deeper, older, and more complicated than most headlines can capture. Let's start with the numbers. In 2025, the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in New York City climbed to $4,150, according to Zillow's August 2025 rental report, up 8% from 2024 and 35% above pre-pandemic levels. If you want to live in Manhattan, it's worse. The median rent passed $5,300. Even outer boroughs, Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, hit records, with neighborhoods like Ridgewood and Long Island City seeing increases of 20 to 30% in 2 years. Meanwhile, wages haven't kept up. The NYC Comptroller's 2025 economic report notes average hourly earnings rose only 3% annually, while inflation ran near 6%. And it's not just renters. Small landlords are squeezed too. The Rent Guidelines Board 2025 review shows property taxes and insurance premiums up 15 to 25% since 2020, while corporate real estate funds buy up entire buildings. The result? A city where owning feels impossible and renting feels like a trap. According to the 2024 New York City Housing and Vacancy Survey, 1 in 3 New Yorkers spends more than half their income on rent. That's not sustainable. That's survival mode. And when rent can't be paid, eviction follows. In 2024, there were 135,000 eviction filings across the 5 boroughs. Every filing is a family, a life interrupted, a set of keys turned over to uncertainty. Then there's the other side, the vacant luxury units sitting empty. StreetEasy's Q2 2025 vacancy index counted over 100,000 vacant apartments, many in brand new towers priced far beyond the city's median household income. Welcome to EstateScope, the channel where we expose the hidden forces shaping today's real estate markets. From climate risk to insurance pullouts to overlooked government policies, we break down what's really behind the headlines and what it means for your investments, your home, and your future. If you're into real estate with a twist of investigative reporting, hit like, tap subscribe, and ring the bell icon so you never miss a story that could impact where you live, what you buy, or how you build. Now, let's get into what might be one of the most overlooked real estate catastrophes of the decade. So, while the city is running out of affordable homes, it's overflowing with apartments no one can live in. That's the paradox defining New York today: abundance without access. Homelessness has reached record highs. The Coalition for the Homeless 2025 State of the Homeless report estimates over 120,000 people sleeping each night in shelters or temporary housing, including 45,000 children. And for some New Yorkers, the solution isn't a shelter, it's a steering wheel. Across the city's industrial edges, in Hunts Point, Red Hook, and Staten Island, you'll find rows of RVs and vans turned into homes. Local advocacy groups like Housing Justice for All and City Limits NYC estimate roughly 1,800 people now live in vehicles full-time across the 5 boroughs, many parking overnight near warehouses or under highways. Some of them still hold day jobs. Teachers, delivery drivers, even retirees priced out after rent hikes. They cook on camping stoves, shower at gyms, and they call it temporary. But in New York, temporary has a way of lasting. This isn't just a housing crisis anymore. It's a livability crisis. Because when people who work full-time have to live in vans beside billion-dollar developments, something fundamental about the city's promise is broken. For decades, real estate developers have shaped New York's skyline, and with it, its politics, its zoning, its destiny. Programs like 421A, meant to spur affordable housing, let luxury developers avoid billions in property taxes for a handful of units that rarely qualified as affordable. The NYC Comptroller's 2022 audit found many of those units were reserved for households earning 130% of area median income, far out of reach for working-class New Yorkers. The program expired in 2022, but its consequences remain. Without it, developers warn construction will slow. With it, taxpayers subsidize luxury towers no one could afford. Either way, the working-class New Yorker loses. And as the skyline climbs higher, the street-level story grows heavier. In Astoria, Corona, and Jackson Heights, families who've lived here for decades are being priced out. The faces that once defined a block are replaced by empty storefronts and for-lease signs. This problem isn't just economic. It's emotional. It's about belonging in a city that forgets you once you can't afford to stay. And yet, despite all of this, people keep fighting to hold on. Because to live in New York City is to believe in resilience. But lately, resilience feels like the only thing still affordable. New York's crisis didn't start with rising rents. It started with decisions, quiet ones made across decades, that reshaped who the city is for. For years, construction meant growth, but not necessarily balance. The NYC Rent Guidelines Board 2025 Housing Supply Report shows that in 2024, only 15,600 new housing permits were issued citywide, a drop of nearly 5% from the year before. The population, meanwhile, continues to climb back from the pandemic. Demand outpaces supply, and the gap widens every year. At the same time, affordable housing construction has lagged far behind the luxury market. The New York Housing Conference 2025 tracker reports that only about 28,000 units of affordable or income-restricted housing were financed last year, less than half of what experts say is needed annually to stabilize rents. The math doesn't work because the system wasn't designed to. For decades, New York leaned on tax breaks to spur private development. Programs like 421A and J51 built on the promise that if developers built more, prices would stabilize. But when the Comptroller's office reviewed 421A in 2022, it found that the majority of affordable apartments under the program were priced for households earning up to 130% of area median income, roughly $140,000 a year for a family of three. In a city where the median household income is about $76,000, that's not affordability. That's arithmetic dressed as policy. So when the program expired, developers warned construction would stall. And they weren't wrong. New building permits dropped immediately after 421A's end, and projects that were already planned slowed or stopped entirely. Now, the city faces the worst of both worlds. No tax incentive to build, and no public funding large enough to fill the gap. In this vacuum, corporate landlords stepped in. Over the past decade, private equity firms and real estate investment trusts have quietly bought thousands of rental buildings across the 5 boroughs. According to the New York Public Interest Research Group, institutional investors now hold at least 60,000 rent-stabilized units, many purchased during foreclosure waves or distress sales. Their goal isn't neighborhood revitalization, it's yield. And that shift in ownership changes everything. Where landlords once lived in the communities they rented out, decisions now come from spreadsheets in offices hundreds of miles away. It's why a tenant in the Bronx might suddenly receive a 20% rent increase, not from a person, but from an algorithm projecting market optimization. Meanwhile, the rise of short-term rentals has pulled even more units out of circulation. A 2024 Inside Airbnb analysis found that over 43,000 listings were active in New York City before new restrictions took effect, many operating as full-time rentals. After the city's new Local Law 18 cracked down on illegal listings in 2023, thousands disappeared overnight. But the damage was already done. Neighborhoods like Bushwick, Harlem, and the Lower East Side lost long-term homes to short-term profit. Each one of these pressures alone would strain a city. Together, they're breaking it. Construction slowed. Costs soared. Wages flatlined. And speculation filled the space where solutions should be. The consequences stretch beyond economics. They're social, even moral. When housing becomes a commodity instead of a right, everything built on top of it starts to wobble. Education, healthcare, community safety, even democracy itself. That's where New York finds itself now. Not just facing a shortage of homes, but a shortage of belonging. The Coalition for the Homeless warns that the city's shelter system is at record capacity. The Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance reported more than 178,000 people cycled through shelters in 2024 alone. Add to that an estimated 1,800 people living in vehicles, and another thousands more doubling up with family or friends, and you start to see a portrait of invisible displacement. Behind every empty luxury condo is a full shelter. Behind every for sale sign is a family running out of time. And yet, the city keeps building upward. Glass towers rising above neighborhoods losing their roots. This is the breaking point. Not because the city ran out of space, but because it ran out of balance. The crisis isn't abstract anymore. It's visible from the street. And every new crane that climbs the skyline raises the same question. Who is New York really being built for? When rent takes more than half a paycheck, survival becomes strategy. And New Yorkers, more than anyone, know how to improvise. Across the 5 boroughs, the housing crisis doesn't just shape budgets, it reshapes lives. People rent half a room instead of an apartment. They move farther out, trade hours of their lives for cheaper square footage, or share studios meant for one. A one-bedroom averaging $4,150 sounds like a number, but in practice, it's a sorting line. It divides who can stay and who must leave. A worker earning $25 an hour, about $52,000 a year, takes home roughly $3,400 a month after taxes. After rent, there's maybe $1,000 left. Subtract food, transit, utilities, and medical costs, and the margin disappears. That's why so many New Yorkers are living not month to month, but meal to meal. In the outer boroughs, rent burden has become the default. The 2024 NYC Housing and Vacancy Survey found 33% of renters spend over half their income on housing, and another 30% spend more than a third. That's more than 3 million people in a constant state of financial triage. Some leave altogether, heading upstate, to Jersey, to Florida. Others stay and adapt. Walk through the industrial edges of Hunts Point, Red Hook, or Staten Island, and you'll see a new kind of neighborhood. Rows of RVs, vans, and box trucks with curtains in the windows. They're not tourists. They're teachers, delivery drivers, retired civil servants, people with jobs, roots, and no affordable rent. A June 2025 City Limits report estimated roughly 1,800 people living full-time in vehicles across the 5 boroughs. Many park overnight near warehouses or beneath overpasses, then move each morning before enforcement begins. Some still shower at gyms. Some cook on single burners plugged into car batteries. Some just drive until they find a quiet street where the engine can cool and no one will knock. Life inside a vehicle looks cheaper, but it isn't free. Fuel, insurance, maintenance, and occasional towing fees drain money faster than expected. A broken alternator can mean eviction on wheels. In New York City, a simple parking ticket for no overnight stay can cost $115. A towed vehicle can mean $350 plus daily storage. For someone earning $20 an hour, that's an entire week of labor gone overnight. And that's just the visible side. The quieter crisis plays out in basements and double-ups, families sharing apartments meant for one household. Census microdata suggest more than 250,000 New Yorkers live in overcrowded housing, often paying rent collectively to hold on to a single lease. Add it all together, and you get what economists call extreme rent burden, but what residents call simply life. Meanwhile, the system keeps extracting. Food prices in the city are up nearly 6% year-over-year. Transit fares rose to $3.25 per ride in mid-2025. Utilities, car insurance, and health premiums all followed. The total cost of survival in New York, just surviving, not saving, now averages $6,500 a month for a family of 3, according to the Economic Policy Institute Family Budget Calculator. That's about $78,000 a year after tax, or a pre-tax income near $105,000. By that math, even middle-income households are falling behind. That's why the RVS appear, why basement apartments overflow, why eviction courts are full every weekday morning. This isn't laziness, it's logistics. People are doing the math and realizing the only affordable option left is mobility. Across America, more than 480,000 people live full-time in RVS, according to the Recreational Vehicle Industry Association 2025 Trend Report. But in cities like New York, it's not recreation. It's economic adaptation, an urban version of what sociologists call vehicular residency. The pattern is spreading quietly, from Queens parking lots to Long Island industrial strips. Each RV is a home without zoning, a mortgage without land, a lease that can drive away. It's resilience and resignation, parked side by side. The city still calls it temporary, but temporary is becoming a way of life. And as those engines idle under bridges and beside billion-dollar condos, one question hangs in the air. What does it mean when a city's workers can no longer afford to live in the city they keep alive? Because the crisis is no longer theoretical. It has a steering wheel, a parking ticket, and a face. New York isn't the exception, it's the preview. Across the United States, the dream of homeownership has drifted out of reach for an entire generation. The numbers are national now, and they tell the same story city after city. In 2020, the median U.S. home sold for about $320,000. By late 2025, that figure is over $435,000, according to Redfin's National Housing Tracker. Mortgage rates that once sat near 3% now hover between 6 and 7, doubling the cost of a 30-year loan. For a $500,000 home, that difference alone adds nearly $1,400 a month to payments. Rents followed the same curve. Nationally, the typical asking rent tops $2,000, up 36% since 2020. In cities like Los Angeles, the median one-bedroom now costs about $2,500. In Miami, it's closer to $2,300. Even formerly affordable metros, Phoenix, Austin, Denver, have seen rent inflation above 40% in 5 years. Meanwhile, wages barely moved. The Bureau of Labor Statistics' 2025 Employment Cost Index shows real earnings rising roughly 1% year over year. A full-time worker earning $20 an hour clears about $3,200 a month. After rent, groceries, gas, insurance, and utilities, the math collapses into debt. The imbalance isn't accidental. It's designed. Since 2010, institutional investors have purchased over 5 million single-family homes nationwide, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. In 2024 alone, investors bought roughly 16% of all homes sold in Atlanta and Las Vegas. The ratio approached 1 in 4. Each purchase removes a home from the owner-occupant pool and converts it into a revenue stream: rent, appreciation, or collateral. Homes are no longer just shelter. They're assets, packaged, securitized, and traded like stocks. The people who live in them have become part of the yield. In California, investor purchases of distressed properties after 2010 turned entire neighborhoods into rental portfolios. In Texas, corporate ownership of starter homes doubled between 2018 and 2024. And in Florida, private equity firms now control more than 80,000 rental homes statewide. The effect is subtle but devastating. Rents rise not just because demand grows, but because ownership has changed hands, from households to holdings. Vacancy tells the same story. The U.S. Census Bureau's Housing Vacancy Survey Q3 2025 reports 14.9 million vacant homes nationwide. Some are seasonal, some under renovation, but millions sit empty in high-value markets where no one can afford to occupy them. Meanwhile, 771,000 people were counted as homeless on a single night in January 2024. The highest number since federal tracking began. That's not a shortage of housing. That's a shortage of access. Public housing once bridged that gap. In 1980, federal housing programs built or subsidized about 200,000 units a year. Today, they fund fewer than 30,000. Federal spending on affordable housing has fallen nearly 70% in real terms since the 1980s. While subsidies for high-income homeowners, mortgage interest deductions, property tax breaks remain untouched. Even the middle class is slipping. Pew Research Center reports that the share of Americans identifying as middle income fell from 61% in 2000 to 49% by 2024. Home ownership rates among adults under 35 dropped below 40%, the lowest in modern history. This erosion of stability isn't theoretical. It's visible in the new geographies of poverty. Parking lot encampments in Los Angeles, camper rows outside Seattle, working families living in motels across Florida's I-4 corridor. The Department of Housing and Urban Development's 2025 Continuum of Care data show that nearly half of the unhoused population now lives in vehicles or makeshift shelters. The system keeps functioning exactly as designed, to protect asset value first and affordability second. In Washington, D.C., real estate and landlord lobbying spending outpaces affordable housing advocacy 20-1. In San Francisco, the city spends $776 million a year managing homelessness, and the count still rises. It costs more to contain the crisis than to solve it. This isn't an economic glitch. It's architecture. A structure built to favor scarcity because scarcity sustains profit. From Wall Street funds buying neighborhoods to cities regulating survival through parking ordinances, the housing market has turned into a mirror of inequality, reflecting not what Americans earn, but what investors expect. And behind every vacancy, there's a family priced out. Behind every profit line, a worker sleeping in a car. Behind every quarterly gain, a widening gap that data alone can't measure. The question isn't whether America can build enough homes. It's whether it can still build them for people, not portfolios. A nation on empty. Across America, the open road has become the last affordable address. Highways that once carried travelers now shelter them. In Los Angeles County, more than 23,000 people live in vehicles. Nearly half of the county's unsheltered population, according to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, 2024. Across California, the number surpasses 250,000. These aren't wanderers chasing freedom. They're nurses, delivery drivers, warehouse workers, people with jobs, paychecks, and no stable rent. A City Limits NYC report, 2025, estimated 1,800 New Yorkers now live in vehicles parked overnight near industrial zones or under bridges, many still clocking into work the next morning. This new America moves constantly, not out of adventure, but out of necessity. Each RV and van is a quiet rebellion against math that no longer adds up. And yet, life on wheels costs more than it looks. Fuel, repairs, insurance, campsite fees, and parking tickets. A single towing fine can erase a week's income. In Maricopa County, Arizona, nearly 70% of vehicle dwellers work full-time, according to Valley of the Sun United Way, 2025. They're not escaping society. They're holding on to it by the bumper. But the problem isn't the people. It's the price of stillness. Across the nation, the median home price now hovers around $435,000, and the average rent tops $2,000. Meanwhile, wages, adjusted for inflation, have grown barely 1% this year. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 2025. That's how working-class families become nomads. Not by choice, but by economics. Even those with roofs aren't secure. The Economic Policy Institute, 2025, found that in half of America's metro areas, 2 full-time workers earning the median wage still spend over 30% of their income on housing. Middle-class families, once the bedrock of stability, are now one missed paycheck away from the edge. The Pew Research Center, 2024, says the share of Americans identifying as middle class has fallen from 61% in 2000 to 49% today. Home ownership for adults under 35 has dropped below 40%, the lowest in modern history. The American middle class isn't shrinking, it's dissolving. Hard work no longer buys progress. It buys survival. For the first time in generations, Americans are asking a question their parents never had to. Can I afford to stay in my own country? Because the road may offer mobility, but not mercy. Every parked RV, every crowded shelter, every empty luxury tower tells the same story. The problem isn't scarcity, it's access. The U.S. Census, 2025, reports more than 17 million vacant homes, while 771,000 Americans remain unhoused. That's 22 empty homes for every person without one. The crisis isn't random, it's architecture, built over decades of policy that prioritized profit over people. Federal housing funding has fallen 70% since the 1980s, while tax breaks for homeowners and investors remain untouched. And lobbying from real estate interests outpaces affordable housing advocacy 20-1. The result is a country where wealth compounds at the top and exhaustion compounds below. Teachers, nurses, and public workers, the very people who keep the system alive, now live in vehicles parked beside it. A nation of motion has replaced a nation of homes. The RV has become the new mortgage, a parking space, the new address. But this isn't about failure. It's about design. A structure that functions exactly as intended, until it finally runs out of people to carry it. The American dream hasn't disappeared. It's parked under a streetlight, running on fumes. And beneath every engine hum, a truth grows louder. A nation that can't house its people can't call itself prosperous. Because home isn't just where we live. It's where a country proves it still has a heart. Stay alert. Stay informed.
Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, please like, comment, and share to help others stay informed. And don't forget to visit EstateScope on YouTube for the full video and more real estate insights.